Hi everyone, welcome to the live. We're cool to have you. I'm with Alex from Fotly, who's joining us today to talk about the product and the growth. So Alex been the CTO. So we're gonna wait a few minutes, but I'm pleased to see Tyler from Gladia being there. A few people from various companies that are recognized. Of course, the Fotly teams is there. Johan, happy to have you, Chi, Sovan, and like many people that I'm used to see.
Yeah,
So cool. Yeah, thank you so much like for being there. We're gonna wait a few minutes to get other people. How are you doing, Alex, today?
doing pretty well. I see a lot of people from Thali on this call, which means people are listening to this and not doing other important work. But I'm just kidding.
This is how it works. Okay. Welcome for Furtly then. Please apply. It seems that the CTO is a very nice person.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. You did take me to a very nice meal in Paris, and I'll say
Oh,
you're
that's
the nice
true.
person here.
That's true. We went to very good restaurants back in the days. It was a good restaurants. I mean, compared to what you
Totally.
can find in Manhattan. Cool. We're gonna wait a few other minutes. Alex, you're based in New York, but where are your teams?
Yeah, so we just got a new office in West Chelsea. We're right next to the West Side Highway. This new office is huge. It's got 2 floors and it's got a terrace outside as well. We're going to be throwing some live events in the coming months, and of course, you and other people are invited.
Amazing. So I feel that if you continue like that, people will leave Gladia and move to Fort Lee just
Well,
to have a good office.
yeah, I don't know about that, but we can dream.
Really cool. We're gonna wait another few minutes. Really cool to see that the people are joining. So pretty nice. Okay, cool. So did you start the company in New York from the beginning? Or
Yeah, no. So the company was started by Tori Leonard. He's our founder and CEO. The company was started in 2023, towards the end of 2023. We were one of the first people, the first companies in voice AI. And I joined the company officially in August of 2024. So I joined as the head of engineering. I was leading our engineering and product development. After about 4 months, 4 or 5 months, became a co-founder of the business. And then recently I took over as the CTO.
okay, congratulations. I mean, you've been part of the journey since the early days. I think when you started 2023 and 2024, I think LLMs were not as popular as it is now, and TTS was not as good. STT were not as
Yeah,
fast.
yeah,
VYP
totally.
was not ready.
Yeah, I think back then in 2023, 11 Labs was just like a new player in the markets, and people were using Google text to speech, and they were complaining about the quality of the generation. Obviously, the product is looking very different today than um, like August when I joined, and also that looks very different from the beginning of 2024 when a lot of this language model stuff is still much newer. And I'm quite proud of the journey that the team has taken us on, and the how far we've come.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It seems that the community is like really starting to really like see the value on the kind of product you're building. So okay,
Yeah,
I think we can kick off and people's going to join. Please feel free to chat there, ask any questions. I will be reading the chat a lot with the teams like Hannah, Constant, Mohammed. They're going to be helping me on that. But mostly the floor is yours, man. And I'm super excited and pumped by this discussion. So please go ahead.
awesome. By the way, I always say one thing before we start
Sure.
is the reason that a lot more people are using our product, Voice AI, is because I think there are two main reasons. One is the obviously the Thoughtly product has come a long way. It's gotten much better, and we've really done some great work on the engineering and product development side to make sure that that happens. and that's a whole team effort, obviously. The other reason is people were much more experimental with AI agents around this time last year, and also just earlier, in the past couple of years. People were more or less interested in seeing what AI can do, so they would come to a company like Thoughtly or maybe even Gladia to experiment and just see what value they can get without the actual intent of buying. Whereas that has changed, and as people understand AI better, people have more faith and belief in agentic AI. So that's also helped us a little bit.
I agree. We've seen the same trend with like meeting recorders back in the days. If you think about like AI was probably a bit less into being proactive, like you have with agentic AI and back and forth with LLMs. They were like slower, not as precise, etc. But what we've seen is like at the beginning, like with meeting recorders, people were just like testing, experimenting, and then we saw like massive adoption. And
Yeah,
people are doing like agentic workflows around like meeting recorders and stuff. So it seems that the path you're going is exactly the same path of maturity that we've seen with meeting recorders over the last three
yeah.
years, I would say. And it's growing super fast.
Absolutely, it's growing super fast, and it's also just incredibly exciting to see the development in this space. We've certainly also benefited from just companies like OpenAI, from Google, from Gladia, and other vendors of ours, where all your models have gotten better. Um, and now it's gotten us to the point where when we're like developing products, we're thinking about not just where the market is today, but also what the market looks like 3 months from now, 6 months from now. Because a lot of these like efforts and projects that we're taking on are longer term, right? For example, if we were to invest more into a specific part of machine learning, maybe the text to speech part, right? Then we have to think about like, if that effort's goal is to improve the model performance, then what would the market look like once we wrap up that project? And is that still a large enough delta for us to make the investment, right? So there are a lot of things to think about.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you thought a lot about that. So
Yeah,
thanks for your introduction, Wars, and I'll leave you the floor. I won't interrupt you too much. I will. Yeah, let's go. So
for sure.
I'll leave you the floor. Do you want like you're okay with the agenda and stuff? You all
Yeah,
set?
sounds good. Sounds
Cool.
good. Maybe I'll do a quick intro for myself, and then we can go through the deck
Yeah,
that we put
please.
together. So my name is Alex. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Thoughtly. Thoughtly does voice AI for large enterprises and mid-market companies. We've sort of like come full cycle, I guess, because in the beginning we were serving more like SMBs, more smaller companies, and eventually we kind of moved up the market. And we're the first company in. Actually, let me. Yeah, this is the better slide. So we're the first company to do really conversational go-to-market platform. So we obviously in voice AI, we handle voice calls, and the voice calls can be inbound or outbound, right? So inbound use cases are more like customer support, maybe some sort of triaging where people are calling into your agents. They have a problem, they have a concern, and they want to get it resolved. So in those type of use cases, you're typically answering questions, referencing some sort of knowledge base, or you are trying to transfer the phone call to a human. So you're qualifying perhaps like the people in the call, you're filtering out some people, you're answering some questions, and then if your agent cannot answer them, then you would take them to a actual human, and the human will take it from there. And then there's also the outbound use cases where your agents are like say doing lead calling for you, lead activation, and that's where most of our traffic is, and that's what we excel at doing, is the conversational go-to-market piece. So we are like so our vision, and this is our product, is we're omni-channel AI agent. So we'll do that for the entire customer journeys, and we'll cover all the channels. So that includes voice, which is a newer channel, phone, SMS, email, all built into one. And that is quite powerful. Essentially, what that allows our customers to do is instantly contact all of your leads and the warm leads. And there's a reason why warm leads are more important. Well, part of that is compliance. Part of that is we just get better returns. Um, so we'll instantly contact all of your leads, and we can handle conversations at massive scale. You'll be able to really talk to people, talk to the callers in minutes and in seconds instead of like the way before where you have to rely on a human. So that used to be days. And we are seeing three times the conversion on traditional methods for contacting leads, and ultimately a 15-time return on investment um, for our customers. And this is across. So far today we've done millions of calls, and we've seen many of our customers be able to win, and some real use cases, some real case studies.
So what made it like having like 15x? Is it the fact that you are able first to use the voice medium instead of like being the written one? And the second question is like, is it a question of like being reactive when people get into the platform on the onboarding, and the fact that you contact them within minutes makes you like having a better conversion?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's a combination of these things. Obviously, part of it is that you're capturing people's attention, right? Immediately, right after they've shown intent. And people's attention is so hard to capture these days because there are so many distractions and so many things happening. I think the timing really does matter, like you said. The other thing is, if you send an SMS or an email, right? Those are the more traditional approaches. Those are the approaches that some other customer engagement platforms have taken, like some of the big ones, like Klaviyo, Attentive, Braze, like these sort of like platforms have taken that approach. But think about how many text messages you get, how many emails you get, and how many of them you ignore. And really, it's much, much harder to convey this sort of like emotion and build a real connection over those like very plain two-dimensional sort of channels. So we're really thinking about voice as a new channel to engage with your leads and turn them into customers.
With appropriate cost, because of course if you have to handle human at some point with like the scaling, it's going
Yeah,
to be very hard to maintain the cost and get the ROI, as you said.
yeah,
And
100%.
bouncing onto that very quickly, we had Johan Sido, that is in the chat, that was asking the question: do you think in the future, like, phone agents will go cheaper, for instance, for like more, let's say, smaller use cases, like small company, personal use case, etc., as it getting a bit more like spread across the practices of marketing inbound and outbound?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, like to answer that question, we can break down sort of like what the costs are, right, for doing this type of business. So and this kind of leads into some of the other things that we can talk about in this webinar is, um, if you break down what it takes to have a voice agent, right? So in a conversation like this, like the one that you and I are having, so imagine if Alex is the agent, I'm a robot, I'm the agent, and Jean-Louis is the human caller that's calling in. Then essentially when you say something, then what happens, right? So your audio gets sent to a phone carrier, and then the carrier would then connect with a voice IP provider, so a VoIP provider, and then they would take that audio and then they would send it to us, send it to Thoughtly. Thoughtly then orchestrates what's under the hood, which is a combination of speech to text. So that transcribes the audio into text format. We then send that to a language model to do two things. First, to figure out sort of like where you are in this overall conversation, and that's important because you want to know if there are specific instructions at different points in the conversation. So our customers, they would like define a workflow ahead of the conversation, ahead of each call. And then our agents have to intelligently figure out where in that workflow the caller is currently at. So once we know that information, then the next step is to generate the right response. And to generate that response, you may pull in information from some knowledge base somewhere, or you may make some external API calls to get fresh information, something. But anyways, those are the two things that the language model is doing, right? So what I call step finding, figure out where you are in the workflow, and then conversation generation. So generate the appropriate response once you know where you are. After that, we send it to a text-to-speech provider, right? So that process is just turning text into audio. And then once we have the audio, the media, then we send that back out to a voice IP provider. And then that gets played back to a carrier and then back to you, to the caller. So that is one conversation turn, right? So you say something, then I say something. So each conversation, each phone call has many, many conversation turns. And the um, and the cost, right, for someone like Thoughtly is the cost at each of these steps, plus the server infrastructure cost, plus the fees. I mean, some fees that we have to pay to the carriers and the VoIP providers, and also our OpEx, right? And so all these things considered, those are all variables that are decreasing over time because the cloud providers, they're constantly trying to win the customers by reducing cost and making it more easy and making it more convenient for people. And so is Gladia, so are all the other providers at every single layer of this, right? And then the other thing to think about is if your voice agent is really doing a good job, right? Like actually, let me take a step back. So every single call, I would say, has a business objective, whether it's inbound or outbound. If it's an outbound call, the objective could be to convert a lead, right? To get that conversion. If it's an inbound call, then the objective could be to successfully triage something for this caller, or redirect them to the appropriate department, to the right human to then take it to the next level or whatever, right? Or if they want to book an appointment, then to actually schedule a booking, that would be the objective. And if you think about a voice agent, if the voice agent is really, really good, it's so intelligent, is able to generate the right conversation, is able to identify the right step at every point in time, then that conversation would be shorter, right? There would be less conversation turns. So if we're really doing our job well, then the cost would not be that long. So overall, I do think like from many different perspectives, the cost is going to go down.
So that's a good point, which is bringing I would say, a big pressure on the call centers in general, because they used to sell. I mean, they're still selling seats, right?
Yeah,
They sell people, workforce. And what you're telling us, it's not about workforce. It's not about number of hours. It's about resolution. And you should
totally.
sell at some point maybe to the resolution. So if you're able to do it in 1 second, then you make a lot of money. If you do it in 10 minutes, then that becomes your problem because you're not profitable. So at some point, maybe we're going to probably get to a point when it's the number of tickets you're going to be able to close with the machines on the task-based basis, maybe something like that at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I think that's the power of the AI agents, right? It's like the agents don't need to sleep, they don't need to take a break, they don't need to get lunch, and they just work. You give us 40, 50,000 leads, and we just call them.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We have seen also another way where voice agents are basically changing the game is everything that is related to the availability of competencies across languages. So let's say you have a product, you're Nike or whatever brand, and you have a very good center of excellence in one region, and you would like to transport that into other regions,
Yeah,
right? Into Europe, into Eastern Europe, into Asia, whatever. The problem you have is how do you find the good people in these other countries, and how do you train them, and how do you make them available at the right time for at the right period, and how do you retain them? And with
totally.
AI, you don't have to do that. You train them once, you have one knowledge base in one language, and you're able to do like understanding in any language, like do the LLM. LLM is basically multilingual thanks to the and billing space and stuff like that, and is able to have a good TTS at some points, like multilingual. So you have kind of a centralized knowledge, harmonization of the process, harmonization of the quality of service across the globe, which make it like super scalable in terms of time, but in terms of like also processes and deployment.
Yeah, going multi-region and globally is the goal, right? It's and right now we're already serving customers in different countries. We have servers infrastructure around the world, and that's also one of the things that I really appreciate about Gladia is you of all the speech to text providers, you guys provide support for the most number of languages. I'm pretty sure you support 100 different languages, and that is that really like is something that was quite attractive to startups like us that want to take on customers from all around the world.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I've interrupted you a little bit of time. Please go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm being passionate. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that makes sense. I keep forgetting that I need to like click next, and I'm the one driving these slides. Sorry about that. So, okay, so next slide, challenges building scalable AI voice agents. So this is so these are some of the technical challenges that are top of mind for me, and also for anybody building in this space. So number one is latency and accuracy. So latency here, I'm referring to not just the traditional latency with SaaS, like loading how fast you load a web page or whatever, but this is also latency and how fast the agent responds to a caller, right? And latency is tricky because on one hand, you're trying to respond as quickly as possible to simulate being a human. Right, like when you say something, a human is not going to wait 4 or 5 seconds before it tells you, before it responds. If it waits that long, you are going to think that something's wrong. And you may then interrupt or say something else, which then causes the agent to cancel the previous generation because it may have already generated part of the response. It just hasn't been played out yet. So then it has to restart that synchronous loop, which is quite problematic. And you get into this like bad cycle. So solving latency means solving latency at every single level. So that's at the speech to text level, the language model layer, text to speech, VoIP, like everything, right? And then what makes latency tricky? Sorry, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was wondering when you mentioning latency, can you give us a definition of what you say latency is? When people finish speaking, when they start speaking, to the moment they receive the informations, like how would you define latency for on a human standpoint and customer experience? And then we can move it. Just want everyone to be clear on the definition.
Totally. At the simplest, the simplest way to put it, latency is how fast it takes for the agent to respond with a response after the caller has said something.
Okay,
So like that's the simplest level.
so for the technical terms, it's end of turn and time to first byte, basically for the speech to text.
Correct. And then you can then break that down into the latency at each of the vendor levels. So like each of the speech to text, the language model, the text to speech, and you're trying to optimize latency at every single one of those levels, and you're trying to make that consistent.
Do you happen to do sometimes to gain some speed, like speculative computing? You were talking about like canceling some requests and stuff like that. Sometimes you are able, let's say, not every word works the same, right? When I
Yeah.
speaking, probably the last words are like a bit useless. Do you happen to do like some speculative, like LLM computing, just in case it was useless and you already have the answers and stuff like that?
Yeah, totally. We think about this all the time, right? We think about this all the time. And what makes um, latency also a little tricky is not everybody has the same expectation for what is good conversation, what is a good enough latency, right? For example, if you're calling into certain use cases, some people like may expect the agent to speak a little slower. Some people may expect the agent to slow down and really wait a bit after the callers have truly like paused for a second or so before the agent starts responding, because that's just what they're comfortable with. So you have to also be able to give customers the controls to adjust these things. And to directly answer your question, there are like a lot of things that we have tried, we have thought about. for example, yesterday I was chatting with one of my colleagues that perhaps we could do something like, say, instead of sending a response to the language model for everything, right? Instead of sending like the instructions to the language model for every single response, what if for certain things we just automatically skip the language model and just send it only to text to speech? And then while that is happening, then ask the language model to compute the rest of it. So you're sort of like masking that latency, right? And of course, the risk there is, what if the caller says something that is very dynamic, right? Like, what if they say something that is that is an edge case, that is unexpected? Then that sort of like optimization would not work, and it would lead to a pretty jarring response because it would be completely unrelated to what the caller just said. And then we've also tried experimenting with other things in the past, such as using a combination of mathematics and language model instead of solely relying on the language model, because the best case scenario, the language model is going to return something in like, say, 300 milliseconds, which is 0.3 seconds, right? So that's the best case scenario. But we may not need to use the language model every single time, because say if you have 3 different responses that are appropriate that you could choose from, if you deterministically know that there's really only 3 responses that you can draw from, then one of the things that we experimented with is using cosine similarity, which is a vector score, to compute sort of like what the instruction at this current step is with the 3 possible responses, and pick the one that is most similar, right, from a math perspective. And then because that computation is just near instant, and then we'll skip the language model and go straight to TTS. So if your conversation is much more deterministic, then that's something that can certainly help.
It's kind of a vector-oriented cache lookup type of thing.
Similar, yeah.
Where it's not like exact match, but if you're close enough, then you can look in the cache what you already have and potentially like go faster.
Right. Exactly. And again, that is risky, right? So
I mean, like in real life, sometimes you have to slow down to better understand. Sometimes you're like just cutting corners in a conversation and that's it. So
right.
we have a few questions in the chat. Sovan is asking a question. What is the latency of an agent, AI agent that speaks Italian and French? I'm using GPT 4.0, 11 labs, and getting latency that is around 1 to 1.5 seconds. Is it normal? And I mean, from your experience, I think most of your job have been typically moving from 1 second to a few milliseconds, doing those things. So how would you respond to Sovan?
So I think Sovan is definitely someone who has played with the stack, and I think so I may be saying some things that Sovan already knows, right? For example, in here you can't use a reasoning model, and you have to use a non-reasoning model, and the GPT 4.0 is fine. Like that's a decent model. I would suggest using GPT 4.1. That may be a GPT 4.1 Nano is like faster, and it could be it could potentially perform better. You have to do some benchmarking and regression testing yourself to find out if the accuracy, which is the other piece of point number 1, still is hitting the mark. And then 11 Labs is not the fastest text-to-speech provider. Their voice quality is quite good, but there are alternatives out there that can be a little faster. And yeah, so I think it's also really important to just like stay up to date with the latest trends in the market, and always see if you're using the right technologies to be able to help you. But I would say generally 1,000 millisecond is not terrible.
I mean, you have to find some ways to do artifacts and stuff like that to potentially handle those kind of blanks.
Yeah, there are also other approaches you can consider taking, which is like you can send the request to multiple vendors, multiple models at the same time, and see what gives you a response first. As long as that response meets some threshold, confidence threshold, then that's what you can go with.
Amazing. I have so many things to share with LMs, but I will leave you. I will let you continue because we can spend hours on latency and distributions and stuff like that. So please go ahead.
Yeah, it sounds good. So I hope I answered that question. And then that also, like, I think I briefly touched on the second point, which is staying up to date with the latest developments. One of the things that excites me so much about this space in this industry is just how fast things move. Being a technologist myself, I love tech. I love when developments are happening, and then um, I can stay up to date with them. Right, that's a challenge, but it's really great, and it's helped our product performance quite a bit by being up to date with the latest trends and changes. But not everything, right? Not everything is good, and there are a lot of considerations that people should make before they just like go all in on pursuing um, a new tool. And I would say to protect yourself against wasting time, you need to have very good evals so that you can quickly see what works and what doesn't work. Are evaluation frameworks. And I would say in voice AI space, like evals there's no like really standard eval. Everybody kind of has their own. Um, yeah, so you have to. I think that's an area that's worth investing into. And then the third, sorry, go back to the previous. Go ahead.
Regarding evals, is it something that you've been as a startup been building from the beginning, or did you start having problems with the customer and starting to put these flows into evals and making like your eval data set based on real life use cases? So where did you start, and at which point did you consider like investing a lot in evals?
Yeah, I think, okay, I'll be lying if I said that this is something that we knew from the beginning, that we just like, said this is the right thing to do and we just did it. No, we very quickly realized that having good evals will save us time ultimately, and is very good, and is a very important sanity check for ourselves to have these like really good evals, right? So the evals can be really simple. It could be as simple as developing a golden data set and then using that data set to replay some of the conversations that you may have had and see which models perhaps would get you the best result, and have some internal benchmarking that just uses something like a cosine similarity to determine if there's a regression.
I shared for the people in the chat 2 companies, that Coval, for instance, or Hawk. I don't know if you have a few others that you have in mind to help them like explore this topic.
Awesome.
Do you have others like except Hawk and Coval?
We haven't used them. I've heard of them, but we haven't really used them directly. We have developed mostly our own internal evals
I mean,
in-house.
you were early in the market, so I think Coval was like probably raising last year in January or something. So I think probably like you were earlier than the rest of the market, so you had to build it by yourself. I know it's a bit probably easier with those companies.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Really appreciate the feedbacks on that and on the questions. I don't know if we have other questions regarding this, but maybe we can move ahead.
Sounds good. So yeah, so scaling an infrastructure is not unique to voice AI. I mean, everybody has to really deal with scale and infra. We're not doing super large volume so someone like Algolia is doing. I know Tyler from Algolia is here. We're not doing anything at that scale yet. We hope to one day, obviously, but still we're handling millions of calls, and we expect these calls to go very well. And that means really having the right servers in the right regions. That means choosing perhaps to use WebSocket over API in certain cases, which my team is working on. Right, it's caching in the right places. It's all these like traditional SaaS ways of scaling, but applying them to a early stage startup. And the challenge there is just making the right investment at the right time. You don't need to build too ahead of where you are today. You don't need to over engineer, right? And the key is to find the right balance. And I think that's very difficult, and it's something that I spend a lot of time thinking about. The next point is compliance. The challenges is compliance and serving enterprises. Enterprise customers have very high expectations. They have very high expectations on security, on reliability, on availability, on data segregation, on multi-tenancy, on all of these things. So my background is I've been in the software development space for about 10 years, and I've worked at fairly large companies that really cared about compliance and serving enterprises, and have worked with companies that were um, that are in healthcare and insurance, that have a strong, that see this as like a core value, right? And that's helped me quite a bit with being able to make sure that Thoughtly is up to date with the latest compliance requirements, and being able to serve these enterprises with trust and with with trust and with comfort. Um, and we've been able to win some deals because we're more ready than other competitors in this area. The next point is customer expectations are different, right? So that's kind of what I was talking about with the latency in the beginning. Is different customers and across different industries have different expectations. People generally also just still don't have a good idea of what AI agents can do. If you go to perhaps someone in the banking industry, if you go to like a Chase Bank or a Capital One, they're going to have much higher expectations for for how little hallucination there is with language models. And some of that is realistic, some of that is not, right? So being able to navigate different customer expectations is something that is always interesting, keeps me on my toes. And then finally, just your typical early stage startup issues, right? I think I'm sure you're familiar with them as well.
You mean
Yeah.
everything breaking?
Well, not everything breaks, otherwise I wouldn't be here.
No,
But
no, no. But I mean that's typically a question I get also from people that are a bit in earlier stage. Is like, where do you know that it's the right pace? I think the right pace is when things are breaking, but not too much.
yeah,
Because if things are not breaking, it means that you're not going fast enough. And
totally,
if it's breaking too much, it means that you're going too fast. So it
totally.
needs to break a little. But it's like when you go to the gym, right? If you
Yeah,
do your reps, if you do one rep, then who cares? When you start to like having the muscles that are cracking, this is where you get stronger. So it needs to
yeah.
be enough to get stronger, but not too much to break your arms or break your muscles.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's like if you want to use the gym analogy, it's like you want to have really good, really strong monitoring in place, right? Really good alerting in place. So maybe you're wearing your Apple Watch, like I am right now. I'm wearing my Apple Watch, monitoring my heart rate, monitoring my calories burned every single day, and I'm seeing, oh, there could be a potential issue here, right? So we have to develop a ton of features. We have to solve some of the problems that were caused because we were moving too fast before. So some of the technical debt, and and yeah, just overall, still function as an early stage startup and meet the compliance requirements that these large enterprises have for us. So I would
So
say,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
So going into like going fast and slow and not going too much ahead, we had the questions from Johan, which was, at which stage do you consider centralizing the VoIP, the voice over IP, into your own infrastructure? I think like
Yeah,
at your point, like it's really core to your business, like the transportation of voice. So when do you consider those things?
yeah, building in-house telephony is something that we have, considered in the past. Um, it's right now is there are, I mean, there are other priorities that I think are that we're just paying more attention to, but it's not out of the question.
The thing is as you said, you have the growth on the one hand, everything that you mentioned, latency, accuracy, compliance, blah blah blah, and sometimes some problems are already solved, and it's about optimization, so you need to pick your battle, I guess. So
Totally.
um
Yeah.
Johan is proposing you to do it if you want.
Yeah.
Thanks, Johan.
I'll reach out to you, Johan, after, and we can chat. Yeah, with a very
Indeed.
small, very lean startup, I think you just have to really be hyper focused on what's most important, what drives the business, and just ruthlessly um, like pay attention to like the top, whatever 5, 10 things that you care about the most, and just stay true to your roadmap.
Cool. Thanks for answering that. I think we can, move ahead if you're,
Cool. Sounds good. So I know I kind of jumped around a little bit. I'm not the best presenter, but I jumped around a little bit. So I've talked about this orchestration, speech to text, text to speech, language model, and VoIP. And then what makes Thoughtly really powerful is we also have a ton of product integrations on top of just like a really strong voice agent. We have integrations with many different CRMs for our customers to use, right? For the agents to be able to contact and connect with before the call, during the call, and after the call. So these are different kinds of like CRMs, like Salesforce, HubSpot. Like these are things like booking softwares, right? Like Calendly and Cal.com. So we provide a lot of functionalities to our customers on top of a agent. And setting up scalable, reliable system. These are some of the things that we have learned at Thoughtly. So latency and accuracy, I think we've touched on that quite a bit, right? The other thing is that you want to build with scalability in mind. So when you're developing, you do want to code defensively. You want to sort of predict where the product is going to be. I'm constantly in touch with our sales team to find out what the expected volume is for potential customers, because I want to know what our new peak traffic is going to be, when that may happen, and when that will hit our system. Being a few steps ahead is going to make sure that we're ready, because the last thing that I want is for people to come to our platform and be disappointed. I want to actually bring real value to the customers that we're serving. So that means having a very good, very strong, reliable code base, and having very good testing, very good benchmarking, and generally just the fairly obvious stuff like effective communication across orgs. I think a lot of startups don't do this well, but we do that very well here at Thoughtly.
So one of my questions is like, for outbound, I see how you can like predict where your traffic will be, right? It's gonna be people in the Bay Area between, let's say, 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. because they are on the road, and this is the place where you can join them, whatever, for, I don't know, insurance, outbound selling and stuff. For the inbound, it's a bit harder to predict. So how do you guys handle those kind of situation when you have peak of traffic? Because I don't know, insurance website has been down and everyone is calling the phone number, whatever, because everything is broken.
That's a great question. So when we, I think that starts with knowing your customers very well, right? Being close to customers and understanding what their needs are. They should have a decent idea of sort of like how much traffic they may be sending to you. And the other part of it is just setting up your infrastructure in a way that allows it to scale up as needed, without that being a huge pain, right? So we do both of these things. We gather the right information from customers, and then we send that over to the product team, to the engineering team, and then we also just prepare for more than usual.
We've seen some of our customers struggling with like scaling also on the TTS part. And what they ended up doing is pretty much what you've said before. It's like caching as much as they could the TTS answers, because it seems to be one of those places where it's hard to scale. So to make it simple, like when you have a surge in traffic, the risk is not to not handle the traffic. The risk is to have higher dispersion around the time for inference. It could be inference like within your own API, or it could be like calling third-party providers, or it could be like STT or TTS or LLM. So mostly this is where we have seen a big work being done by people like Thoughtly, doing like smart caching and a bunch of rules that are like beyond just like, hey, let's do STT, LLM, and TTS, and that's it. It's going to work. a big part of the orchestration is also handling those kind of edge cases.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think some of that caching is already happening under the hood with like STT, TTS, and whatever. But yes, at our level, we also try to be smart about not making extra unnecessary requests when we don't need to.
Thank you so much, because we need you to be careful with that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. If you guys have questions, please ask them in the chat. I'll be happy to pass that to Alex.
Nice. And yeah, some of the other things to achieve the real-time performance, all the things I've talked about. So vector scoring and language model as a judge, use that in combination. I wrote a paper on this with one of my former coworkers back in January of this year. So this again works well when your conversations are more deterministic. And then there's also the consideration of on-prem hosting versus remote hosting. We've tried on-prem hosting of, say, a speech-to-text model before, but this is it goes to the point I made earlier about how the market is moving so fast. In that, I would say this time last year, it's fairly typical to get to have your speech-to-text take something like 400 to 700 milliseconds to get a response. Whereas now the benchmark is a fraction of that, right? So that's something like 50 milliseconds to 150 milliseconds. And that completely removed the need to host anything on-prem, because then there's also this consideration of like the infra cost, the server cost, and the hops between the servers, which is like 150 milliseconds themselves on AWS, for example. So yeah.
There are some things that people tend to forget. I've seen many people saying, let's do self-hosting and stuff like that. They're going to end up with some other problems, which is the kind of problem that we have on our end, but we are able to cover because we have a certain number of customers who are able to kind of dilute the search in the ocean of GPUs.
Yep.
But GPUs take typically between 10 minutes to 20 minutes to be popped.
Mm.
That's something that people should keep in mind. So if you have a search, it's not because you have self-hosting that the booting of the GPU will be faster.
Right.
You're going to still be waiting 10 to 20 minutes. So in the meantime, what's going to happen is like you're going to have a bunch of like WebSocket that's going to be like keep pushing on the same GPU, which is going to increase the latency. So you're going to have poor quality. The only way you can move through that is like going into like various percentile of like latency. And if you want to have like P90, P95, P99, is to over provision. And
exactly.
when you start to over provision, that means like you need to have monitoring, and you need to have proactive monitoring, and you need to do forecast. And then it means that you have extra cost and infrastructure, which is going to cost you like probably 20 to 40% more. And you keep adding those things. And in the end, you end up like doing the job that you're basically, that is not adding value to your customers at some point. So again, because the question is like, what should you do? It's like VoIP in the end.
100%. It's the GPUs are not cheap, right? They're pretty expensive, and unless you want them running all the time, you're going to have to try to avoid the cold start issue that you were talking about. So yeah, I totally hear you. The next the trade-offs and decisions made along the way, very careful selection of vendors, right? Because there are a lot of people in the markets. They're not all equal. They're not created equal. That goes back to having very good evals and testing and benchmarking. Machine learning investments, that's something I've thought a lot about. Thoughtly is, I think one of the things about building a voice AI platform is it makes sense to go more vertical. And when you go more vertical, then the opportunities for your ML investments to more exponentially give you a return is bigger. Because then you can like use the learnings from, say, one provider in that vertical and apply it to another provider in the same vertical. And that's something that we have already done and is something we're going to invest more into in the very near future. Product features to build. So figuring out what to build when there are so many different options, when customers are asking for many different things, is critical. Uh, Having the vision to know like what you ultimately are driving at, say long term, short term, medium term, and long term, is going to save us and save other startups from just wasting a lot of time. One of the features that we thought was really cool that I want to give a quick shout out to is conditional navigation. This is something that we spend a lot of time going back and forth on to make sure that we get right. And conditional navigation essentially allows the agents to be smarter and more intelligently navigate to the right node based on, say, perhaps like a response from an external API, from an action, or something that a caller has said earlier on in the conversation. Right. So a very quick example is if the caller's date of birth that they have provided is indicates that they're below a certain age, then this conditional navigation would allow the agent to more reliably navigate to the right node and treat them, say, as an adult or a teenager. And this sort of feature was one of the ones we prioritized, even though there were many other requests, right? So that goes back to staying close to the customers, which my product team has done a great job at doing. Lessons learned in production, infrastructure and vendors are always getting better. So I got to think ahead and see where the market is. Customer expectations are increasing. That's the other thing is, as people get to know AI better, people also like hear that AI is getting better. So they expect the agents to perform better. As an orchestrator, so that means we have decisions to make on like we have this balance that we have to maintain as well for what is realistic and what is sort of like something that's more realistic 6 months from now. And again, everything goes back to investing in a strong code base and a strong culture, which I care deeply about, because ultimately that improves product velocity. To not have to spend days resolving a bug in a code base that is, that is quite ancient.
That's actually hard. Like we went through that too. Um, we hire a guy. He's not there, but that's Thibault. We knew that this guy would be changing the culture, and I think it goes also through hiring. At some point, you need some people that are scrappy, but sometimes you need people that are like more strong on guidelines and things like that. And I think we shouldn't underestimate that sometimes you need to find the right balance in the team. You can be getting to your comfort zone of being scrappy, and so like, yeah, this guy is gonna be tough with us. He's gonna definitely like telling us that we did shit. But this is what we need, like self-discipline at some point. So
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
would say, yeah, it was hard on our end, to be honest. But like this guy Thibault, I'm mentioning, like really structuring how we handle. I know we have less. You were talking about like legacy kind of code or like dead bodies.
Mm,
We have less and less dead bodies. So I think it's really underestimated thing there.
yeah. Speaking also, yeah, I should also quickly plug in that Thoughtly is hiring. We're hiring engineers here in New York City. So if you consider yourself a great engineer, I would love to get in touch with you. So just send me a direct message on LinkedIn.
Really nice.
I had to put that there.
Amazing. Okay, and then we have a few questions. We're in the Q&A now. We have a few questions. The first one, like from Sovan, is what are the alternatives to 11 Lab for TTS? I suggested Cartesia, Rhyme. Do you have others in mind?
No, you covered it pretty much. We have a very good relationship with Cartesia. I think that team is building some really exciting things. There's also alternative open source sort of like TTS providers that that are worth looking into.
There is a TTS Arena if people are interested. So it's TTS Arena 2. I'm going to send it in the chat. That's from Hugging Face again. They have a leaderboard. So I think one of the difference between STT and TTS is like TTS is more like vibe evaluation at some point, rather than having like pure metrics. There are a bit of metrics like character error rates and stuff like that, but if you look at this, you see that like you have Hume. Hume has been great, and a few others in the pipe. So I would
Yep.
definitely suggest that you guys go look at the TTS playground. Okay, cool. We have a few other questions. If you have a bit of time.
Yeah.
There was one question is like, what is your differentiation with other providers such as Retail AI or VAPI, to name a few of them?
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for what the competitors have done. I think like but they're not the same in that we serve different ICPs, we serve different verticals. Vapi, for example, is more of like a developer tools company. So whereas we target customers directly, and um, one of this may be like a cop out answer, but I would say one differentiation is also just the quality of the product. Right, customers compare different products side by side. They do a 1 month pilot and then they choose Thoughtly. So if that's, I think that speaks for itself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's. I mean, the customer is the one deciding. I mean, it's what you are applying to your own vendors is what the customers are applying to their own vendors. So they need to find the right spot between all these technologies. Um, Regarding these topics, I feel that you're covering something that is super important. Like the market is huge and
Yep.
the opportunity is insane. And I personally don't think that only one vendor can cover this opportunity. It's a
Yeah.
one life kind of opportunity. It's a bit like if you think about like the internet bubble back in the 2000, there
Hmm.
is no one single hoster that ended up like covering all the internet hosting. And it's kind of the same. You're gonna have voice hosting, and in the
Yep.
voice hosting, then you have, yeah, some of the people are gonna look for speed, some of us gonna look for like better drag and drop like Webflow, some of us gonna look like DevTool like Vercel, some of them like
Hmm.
gonna be, oh, I need like pure like speed, and it's gonna be like doing by myself with Cloudflare. So I think everyone's gonna have its choice, and you have enough to cover various use cases, and yeah, it's vast. Just to give you an idea of the numbers of hours that are being generated
Mm.
in the world, it's like 500 billions, 500 billion hours of audio generated every year, with like customer support, meeting recording, etc. And we know that a big part of it's going to be automated with agents. So just imagine how is the size of it. And if you think about that, you're like, the question is like having who's going to be the winner, is who's going to be the winners first, and then who's going to be fast enough to cover the needs, infrastructure scaling, energy wise, computation wise, etc., etc. So sometimes it's just like you're in the pack and you're looking the others, but you're fighting in the same category at some point. You're like, just the few of you guys gonna cover probably 60% of the needs, and they're gonna be Harvard joining the party. But that's already insane. Um, so I would say that sometimes you shouldn't look too much at the competition and should focus on your customers and fighting against the market in the adoption rather than fighting against the competitors at some point.
You're absolutely right. And I think it's a distraction to constantly compare with the competitors and see what they have and you don't have. Is rather, I forgot who said it, but you should be focusing on also what you may have that they will not have because you have identified some niche or some pain point that they have not seen yet.
Absolutely. I have a question for you that has
Yeah.
not been there, but that's super important, I think, for the people that are there. Is what is your recommendation for a startup that is beginning into the voice AI agents or is starting to like explore these platform things and trying to find a product market fit, the great business to serve the customers, to serve a need, or just like money? What is your recommendation and what you've seen working and not working?
Yeah, well, that's a topic we can talk about for a long time. I think to condense my long answer that I would have given is focus on solving problems, focus on delivering value. And I know that that's something that like everybody says, but there are a lot of ways to generate revenue in voice AI without actually bringing value. Because many people are willing to experiment with voice AI and then they come and then they leave, they churn. So to avoid that, I think it's really important to identify sort of like what you want to target and then be very close to the customers, and then build a product that actually works well. Voice AI is getting easier and easier to build in. It's really easier to build in. So now it's more about the execution of like, yeah, that's just the execution. And I think ultimately it's, if you think about where the space will be 5 years from now, it's the people are going to have, the customers are going to have much higher expectations for what the agents can do. And it will be so easy to launch agents that you have to have some sort of like defensibility somewhere. And I would suggest going also go into a vertical and be more niche.
Yeah, there are niche everywhere. There are niche in limos reservation. There are niche
Yeah.
into taxi driver complaints. There are niche into like
Hmm.
healthcare complaints for dentists. And every time you have a specific jargon, you have specific procedures, you have specific workflows, specific like CRM, MCP integration that are big enough for you to be the specialist and to be the leader in those space, while building on platforms that are like thoughtfully leaders into the orchestration. And you can focus on the white glove services with your customers in integration.
Yeah.
So basically, you're saying that Paul Graham is right, saying build something that people want, which seems stupid, but
I'm not. I
obvious.
promise I'm not just repeating Paul Graham's white paper, but the reason I also mentioned niche is because it's very easy to take a voice AI stack that you've built and make that horizontal, because it can apply to every single vertical. So to pick one and confidently pick one and say that's the one we're going to go with takes a lot of guts, and you better be right. That's the right bet, right? Because being first in different verticals is also, being first to market is, there's also a huge advantage to that, to ask the questions that no one else has asked yet, to get insights that no one else will understand, and then use that to improve your product.
Absolutely. Thanks for the wisdom on that.
Yeah. Thank you.
We have a question from Guillaume, which is related to what we just discussed. How do you handle integration like CRMs? Is it via MCP, API? And how do you scale those integrations with time?
Yeah. So I know different voice AI companies to do this differently. So for us, we do API integrations. We haven't done the MCP approach yet. I mean, well, that might happen in the future, but one thing that I've heard from other builders who are very far along in the voice AI space, some competitors of ours, is when you have your agent essentially autonomously decide if you're going to call a MCP server at any given point in the conversation, that is additional latency that you have to think about, and sometimes it's not consistent, and sometimes it can take a long time. So for us, we've just simply found more success doing it the way that we do.
Great insight. We have another question for Sovan, who's on fire today. And asking a great question. I'm sure you're going to be happy to answer because you have a great expertise on that. It's about compliance. Is your platform HIPAA compliant, and what does it take to be HIPAA compliant?
Thoughtly is HIPAA compliant. Thoughtly is also SOC 2 compliant. And to get there, I mean, I don't, there's like a bunch of rules um, on compliance for these things. I don't want to misquote it. I would suggest looking it up and perhaps hiring like someone who with more expertise in compliance, but it's definitely achievable. I mean, at a very high level, you got to make sure your platform is secure and it's that there's good multi-tenancy supports, that the data that there's data privacy protection in place. yeah, I would defer that to perhaps the compliance person who knows more about this than I do.
Yeah, you have two ways to solve that, 2 or 3 ways. There are a few startups there that are pretty new. Um, I know there is one of them that went out of. I think it's called Sprinto, but I'll try to. And Delve. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
This one is Delve. I think you can be by compliance in just a few days/hours.
Yeah, they work with a
Uh,
lot of startups.
yeah, they have almost everyone in YC now.
Yeah.
IPA compliance is relatively easy. It's self-declaration. So it's like you self-declare a certain number of process, which is very different from everything that is ISO. ISO is very painful because you have to demonstrate, while in IPA you have to declare. And if you have an audit, then you will have to demonstrate. On ISO, you have to demonstrate ahead of the certification. You have, so the first way is like people like Delph. You have others that are ways that you mentioned, like hiring someone that already did that. And the third way is having some people like Rimetech, for instance, who's
Hmm.
one of our partner, who's going to be kind of like chief information security officer / compliance officer as a service. So it's like fractional people that's going to help you. Honestly, it's like employees. It's not extra expensive. They are super responsive, and they're going to be like helping you on a day-to-day basis until the moment you're going to have someone full-time. But at your stage, it's like I would recommend do by yourself with Delve, and then go with like fractional, and then go with like full-time employee.
Yeah.
Depending on how critical is your business. If your business is super critical, then go for full-time hire, of course. But I would suggest, like, you have 3 different approaches, and then of course then you have like bigger topics. If you're like super big organization and you're going to go through Capgemini and Deloitte and all these companies, that's another story. Also, I would suggest that you go with people like Vanta, Drata, a platform. If you are going into like more complex systems, but try to keep your system as small as possible. And some of the mistake we've made on our side, sharing on our side, and it's a Fortly webinar, but I would share that how painful it was on our hand. We had a bunch of like various provider a bit everywhere. We didn't like focus on like it goes back to like distractions and having testing plenty of tools and plenty of cloud providers and stuff like that. And when it goes to certification, then it becomes a nightmare. So I would say, like, if it's part of your business, then think about being like very lean into your infrastructure approach, which can be like very hard in the end to handle your certification issue if you're too broad at some point. Thank you so much for your time, Alex. I don't know if you have some few words for the community before we leave.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate this, being able to share some of the things I've learned with you guys. And if you have questions about anything, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. And
Thank you so much.
Thank you for hosting,
Man,
Jean-Louis.
that's
And
thank you for coming. I mean, it's one of the best platform out there. There are not that many that are that easy to handle and to build from. So being in the space, I recognize how hard it is to make things simple when they are complex behind the scene. So
thank you, sir.
congrats.
Thank you for that.
We're gonna send, of course, to the people that attended. We're gonna send the link to the platform. And thank you so much for sharing the insights. It was super nice. I know there are some things that are like a bit more technical, but I'm sure everyone loved that.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you, Alex. See you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks the community for being there. See you guys.
Bye, guys.